So, like I said, my name is Chris Jagazia, and I'm here from Off to Class, and I'm here today to give you a demonstration of our new business setup. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And as I mentioned, you can post your questions using the Q&A button, and I will take them up at the end of the session. So, the business setup, I'll just give you a bit of a background. The reason we launched business setup is because a number of the teachers and schools that we were working with had indicated that they wanted a setup on Off to Class. They wanted a version of Off to Class that really felt like their own, that didn't include any Off to Class branding, and really only included the teacher or the school's personal brand. So we took your feedback and we came up with the business setup. So we already had what we called the professional setup on Off to Class. And so the professional setup had some branding of the teacher on the platform, whereas the business setup takes all the branding elements of the professional setup and takes it one step further. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. So the business setup is truly a white label, a completely white labeled version of Off to Class that only includes your brand or your school's brand rather than any Off to Class branding. And since we work with teachers, as most of you know, we are a teacher-led platform. We only sell Off to Class to teachers and schools. It doesn't make sense for us necessarily to put our brand in front of your students, because your students are not our customers. Your students are your customers. They're your customers, your students, and we have no interest in them. We don't sell Off to Class directly to your students. So it made sense for us to launch this business setup that would completely mask the identity of Off to Class to your students, and that's why we launched this, why we're quite happy with what we've done, and the feedback so far has been really positive. So this is my teacher account under a business setup, and you're going to notice a couple things that are likely different from your teacher account. So up in the URL bar here, of course, I'm on the teacher page of Off to Class, the lesson library. And normally this would say offtoclass.com/teacher. But in this case, I've taken a subdomain of my domain. My domain is called esl/school.online. That is actually my domain. And what I did is I went ahead and made a subdomain called demo.esl.school.online. And I've pointed that towards offtoclass.com. And so any URL from Off to Class, example, offtoclass.com/teacher, is now the first part, the offtoclass.com part, is now replaced with my subdomain. So instead of offtoclass.com/teacher, it's demo.eslschool.online/teacher. And you'll notice that for any page I navigate to. So if I go to the student management page, the same thing, you'll see my domain/student. If I go to the placement test page, you'll see my domain/placement. And if I launch a lesson, you'll see the same thing. You'll see my domain/classroom/ the identifier to show what lesson I've launched. So first big change between the professional setup and the business setup is that you can actually run Off to Class off your own custom domain. And this is both for the teacher account, but also for the student accounts. If I navigate over to the student side of Off to Class, so this is one of my students that I have registered to my teacher account on my Off to Class business setup account. And you'll see the exact same thing going on in that student's address bar. It's demo.eslschool.online/student. And when they open up a piece of homework, for example, the same thing is going on. So it's demo.eslschool.online/homework and the unique identifier for the homework ID. So that's the first big change, is that now when you upgrade from a professional setup to a business setup or go for a business setup, you will be able to run off your own domain. And I can go over some of the logistics around setting that up. I'm going to cover setup at the end of my presentation. The other big change on Off to Class with the business setup is that you'll notice my logo. So this is obviously just a logo, a dummy logo. Obviously your logo doesn't say your logo. It says something like Teacher Steve or Teacher Lynn or Lynn's ESL School. It's very much, your logo and your brand is a very kind of personal conversation that's specific to your business. But whatever your logo is, under the professional setup, you've already been able to load up the logo and place it on many parts of the platform. But the big change with a business setup is that you can actually now put your logo directly on the lesson content. So if I open up a lesson, let's say I'm going to open up an IELTS lesson, because everybody loves training IELTS candidates. And I'm going to enroll my student Jose into the lesson. And now I'm in the lesson content. So now you'll notice one big change from the professional setup is that my logo is now on the lesson content itself rather than the Off to Class logo. And every slide actually is branded with my logo. And likewise, if I come over to the student side of Off to Class, so I've enrolled my student Jose into this lesson. My student presses join lesson to join my lesson from his side of Off to Class. And he automatically gets synced to the current slide that I'm on. Just gonna pull him over. There you go. You'll see that his logo, my logo, is now present on the platform. And actually, sometimes my logo is a little bit too big, and this is why we've now suggested that you use a transparent logo so that your logo doesn't block any of the content when some of the content goes down a little bit too far on the page. But I'll just move to another slide. There we go. So we're now on slide 6. And if I come back to the student side of Off to Class, you can see that the logo is present for the student as well on every slide. Now, the third big change I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second. The third big change on Off to Class business setup is that, as you know, we have a lot of student notification emails. So if your students are assigned a piece of homework, or if your students are assigned a placement test, if you have those notifications enabled on your teacher profile, your students get an email notifying them, saying your teacher has assigned you a homework assignment, or your teacher has assigned you a placement test. Now, those emails tend to come from either students@offtoclass.com or info@offtoclass.com. And the third big upgrade from a professional setup to a business setup is that now those emails will come from a generic email address sender, which is esl/school.online. It wouldn't be from your own email address because we don't have access to your email, but it's still a generic address that doesn't link back to Off to Class. So it's from a generic address, non-identified to Off to Class. So those are the 3 big changes since we launched our business setup. So like I said, it's the ability to run off your own domain, the ability to put the logo directly on the lesson slides, and the ability to send emails from a generic address rather than offtoclass.com. Now, I'm just going to talk a little bit about implementation before taking up your questions. So from an implementation perspective, you can find out all the information you need to find out about the business setup. I'm just going to go to our pricing page, sorry. So if you come down to the pricing page, you'll notice that things have changed a little bit. We've broken picking your package into 2 steps. So there's a step 1 and a step 2. So in step 1, we go over these setup options. So all accounts or subscriptions on Off to Class by default are on the basic setup option, which adds no cost to your platform. You just buy your subscription, and then you're on a completely Off to Class branded platform. Now, we still keep the professional setup option, which is still priced at $150, and that puts your logo on the placement tests, on the homework, on your own branded login pages. It still allows you to print student achievement certificates, but it doesn't put your logo on the lesson content itself, and it doesn't allow you to run off your own domain, and it doesn't have that generic email sender. And now what I've been talking about today is the business setup. And so this is taking all the elements of the professional setup and adding those 3 elements I just talked about. And you have a nice table here where you can compare the differences among the setup options. And just under the table, you've got this button here, which will actually take you to a demo tool. So when you go to the demo tool, you can actually load your logo and demo the differences between the 2 different setup options, professional and business, and scroll through the demo to see all the different elements of where your logo is going to show up on the platform. So the demo tool is quite powerful. It can really help you visualize the difference between business and professional. You can even load a couple different logos, see which one looks best on the platform, and it's your friend. So I'll just go back to the pricing page and show you at offtoclass.com/pricing. You have a table that compares the 3 setup options, and you have a demo tool which takes you to this demo tool, which allows you to load your logo and compare the 2 different premium setup options. Now, as far as implementation is concerned, once you enable this on your account, you can purchase this on your account page. I've got a button linking me to my account page right here. But if I wanted to navigate to my account page, I click on the profile button, pink profile button in the top right of any screen on Off to Class, and then I just click on account. And I just click on account, and this is where I can make any changes to my plan and add one of these options. So once that's done, I will then be prompted to go to my setup page. And my setup page is also on my profile. So if I wanted to navigate there, I would click profile and then click, instead of clicking account, I would click setup. And there is where you'll load your logo. So the one difference between the professional setup and the business setup is that we do now put your logo on the lesson content themselves, on the lessons themselves. So we would recommend that you load a transparent logo. And I mentioned that before. And if you don't know how to generate a transparent logo or how to, what a transparent logo even is, it's not a problem. We've linked you a free converter right here that you can use to upload your existing logo to turn it into a transparent logo. And then the second step to run off your own domain is that you'll need to, first of all, list the domain that you'd like to be pointing to Off to Class. And then once you list it and you save it, you would then download this folder and follow these instructions to load the folder, the files, to your server. Now, from a technical perspective, if you have someone who you will need a bit of technical assistance. We obviously have detailed instructions here that you can follow, but we cannot actually go into your server and upload these files ourselves. And the reason for that is you don't, well, twofold. You don't want us in your server playing around with things. And at the end of the day, every server configuration is very different. So you would actually need to take the files here and follow these instructions and load them to your server. If you do not have that kind of technical experience or qualification, then you could take these instructions and go and find a freelancer. Potentially you can go to a freelancer online on Fiverr.com, on Upwork or other freelancing sites, and you could find someone who could upload these for you. For someone who knows what they're doing, we're talking about less than 10, 15 minutes of work. So it's not hard to do. But if you don't know anything about servers and where files and folders sit on the server side, I would recommend that you find someone to help you do this. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a freelancer that you've located. But yes, once those files are uploaded to your server, like I said, for someone who knows what they're doing, it's about 15 minutes of work. Then what's happening is when you go to this domain that you've saved, that will point to your login page. And then as long as the students or the teachers log in from that domain, then that domain will be present throughout their entire off-class experience, as I was showing you before. Now, if you already have a website, let's say you're already running a website called teachersteve.com, and you've got that domain. And you've got teachersteve.com, you've got all sorts of great information about Teacher Steve and why you should book lessons. And so you don't want to point Teacher Steve to offtheclass.com, because then you lose all that web presence of teachersteve.com. So what you would do in that case is the first step is you would go to your host and you'd set up a subdomain. So a subdomain is when you take a piece of domain, a piece of text, and you place it before the root domain. So in this case, the root domain is teachersteve.com. So I would probably make a subdomain called students.teachersteve.com. And it's students.teachersteve.com that I'd actually be saving here on step 2. And then I'd go and load the files and point students.teachersteve.com to these files that I've downloaded here. And then on my website, the simplest thing is just make a button that says students log in here. And when students press students log in here, that will take them to students.teachersteve.com, which will be pointing to your login page. And then every page on Off to Class will be students.teachersteve.com/teachers/students/placement. So generally, if you do have a website built, we would recommend setting up the subdomain. But we can coach you through that as part of when you come on a business setup. We can provide you guidance on how to do that. We just can't actually load the files ourselves onto your server. And everybody that comes on to the professional setup options has access to my team for a bit of coaching. So if this is sounding a bit daunting to you, don't worry, we can coach you through it. We've got a lot of experience of bringing different teachers onto this kind of setup. So that is most of what I wanted to cover today. I think it's about time to probably jump into your questions. There seems to be quite a few. And so just a reminder that you can post your questions up in the top left using the Q&A button. And I will just jump right into these. So. Okay, I think we've answered Lynn's first 2 questions. Yeah, so Lynn's asking a good question. Is it possible to still use SSL? So SSL, for everybody that doesn't know what that means, is that would be encryption. So offclass.com, for example, is encrypted. So what we do is we run an SSL certificate. Every year we have to update it so that everything that goes on offclass.com is encrypted. And just to give you a bit of background, that just adds security to the whole website. And so many of you might have your websites running off SSL. And if you do, that's great. We would recommend that. And then that will completely line up with Off to Class, because Off to Class is already encrypted as well. If you don't have an SSL certificate on your website, which I don't, actually on my demo.eslschool.online, I will just get this little warning that my connection is not private. So basically what it's telling me, what Google Chrome is telling me, is that offtheclass.com uses an SSL certificate, but because you don't have one installed on your site, you're not taking advantage of those benefits. So that's a good question. So we can advise you too on loading up an SSL certificate. Your host will be able to do that for you. It's kind of an out of the box process these days. Your host would just load that up for you on your side, and it's very reasonably priced to do that. And we would recommend you having an SSL certificate for your website anyways. Steve's just saying the student address bar still says offtheclass.com. Oh, that's because I logged in and logged back out. Okay, good point, Steve. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's because I logged in and went to offtheclass.com and logged back out. So I broke that path. But it won't happen again in another demo. Lynn's asking, are there any continuous costs of the business setup? No, there are no continuous costs of the business setup. So it really is a one-time setup fee. And the reason for that is it's just because once your branding is up, we require you to just pay the upfront costs so that you can get the branding up, but there are no continuous costs thereafter. Lynn's asking what's the best size for the logo. We provide you all that information, Lynn, here on your setup page. So you've got the specs and the size and the little text about using a transparent logo. Steve's asking how many students can a school support? How many teachers? Steve, our biggest clients have 2,000 students on the platform and 100 teachers. So there's no limit. You can have as many teachers and students running off your own unified platform if you want. That's somewhat of a separate conversation to this topic, but when we work with enterprises, we provide an administrator login that controls all the different teacher and student accounts. So yeah, that provides a kind of an enterprise view of the accounts. So that's not a problem whatsoever. And Steve's asking, can I pass authentication information to keep students from having to log in separately? No, not currently. You can't. That's something in the pipeline. But we do, as you know, we do remember the cookie. So it shouldn't have to be occurring every time they press login on the website. And Lynn recommends that everybody get a SSL certificate. Fantastic, Lynn. I agree. Okay, so if there are no more questions today, I think we'll cut it off. You will get an email about this recording, and you can let me know after if you have any more specific questions, perhaps once we review the recording, and you can let me know if you got any questions, and we would be happy to answer them by email or digitally. Thank you very much for everybody showing up today. And we look to host you for any future webinars. Take care.